Thank you very much, William. Hopefully everybody can hear me. It's November in Berlin. It's the best month of the year. Everybody has a cold and it sucks. But I try to speak as loud as I can, and you just give me a sign if you can hear me anymore. And first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It really meant a lot to me because women's rights are human rights, as we just heard. But it's not just about the issue. It's about speaking to young, colorful audience. Normally, I'm just used to talk to old white men to try to lobby them and then try to make them listen to what I have to say. So this is really a refreshment to me, and I really like to invite you to ask me everything you want to hear. And I try to be as quick, but I try to also explain everything you might need to know about what is the G20 and so on and so forth. But let's start with the title of my presentation is so pathetic, Women20, Women's Economic Empowerment in the G20 and Beyond. I could talk about this issue for 10 years at least. So I have about 20 minutes. We'll try how far I can get. So I would like to start with who and what actually is the G20. I guess most of you heard about this, but I just want to make sure we are all on the same page. And what is W20 then? GW, more letters coming up. What does this mean? How was it set up? What were the results? How did the advocacy work? And what are the lessons learned? And is there some kind of outlook I want to give? Of course. So, who is the G20? So, anybody else would like to add something? Germany, 20 so. You're quite not that noisy as I thought. So, well, the G20, officially it's a group of 20. Well, actually it's just 19 countries plus the EU, as you can see here. And if you use just the number 20, I think it's a rather small number because we're used to bigger numbers of countries when we talk about settings like the UN, for example. Then we have about 196 countries. Now we're just talking about 20 countries. They are powerful. They may decide what's going to happen to the whole planet in the future. Are they allowed to talk about those things? They're just 20. I just want to show you the map. 20, yes, but it's a lot of space they're covering, right? And when those 20 countries come together, they invite each year several guests, and just during the German presidency we have right now, the guests like Spain, Netherlands, Norway, and Singapore were also invited. So it's quite a picture, I think, and you need to be aware that those 20 countries are representing 2/3 of global population, 4/5 of global GDP. This is power, definitely. 3/4 of worldwide trade, and actually it's quite a young informal forum. It's just started 1999 officially as a meeting of ministers for finance and central bank governors, and since the huge economic crisis in 2007, just since then it is a meeting which was upgraded to the heads of states and government, and they're meeting each year. As I said, it's an informal forum. The presidencies are changing. Last year it was China, this year it's Germany, and Argentina is about to start the 1st of December. So it's not starting the 1st of January, it's starting the 1st of December, then the next presidency will take over, and after Argentina, just as a spoiler, comes Japan and then Saudi Arabia. So it's traveling all the world, and each presidency gives not just the agenda, but a certain topic and certain issues the presidency will focus on. So, but just even though each presidency has, let's say, typical character, generally this forum is focusing on financial stability. Why am I stressing this? Because we need to aware this is not a group of people who want to change the world. What they try to do is to focus on financial stability. This is the reason they meet. And still, why am I here? Why am I talking to those guys? Because I know that it is a very important forum for political opinion forming. If we convince them to do something, they are going to spread these ideas to the UN, to the WTO, to all the other, let's say, more officially accepted fora we have. And since the UN and the WTO, which I just stressed, let's say, aren't as good working as we want them to work, I hope this was a diplomatic way to say we need to change the way they work. This is one of the only fora I have for a woman who wants to change something. Just another spoiler, there is not a single country on this planet where gender equality exists. Not a single country. I'm coming from Germany. I have a chancellor, the Chancellor Merkel. You all know Justin Trudeau, I guess, from Canada, the feminist. Not him, not Merkel, no one made their country a gender equal country. They are not existing. So I want this. I guess you all want this too, at least I hope so. So where to head to? Whom to talk to? That's why we decided to talk to the G20. So, and we're not the only ones. There are also other organizations, international ones, invited to those meetings. You can see them here, the UN, the OECD, the World Bank Group, ILO, and so on and so forth. So these countries, plus representing a much bigger audience and much bigger group of people out there as well. And here you can see the G20 symbolized as the sun in the center. And circulating around this sun, and with the sun I mean we're not talking about just one meeting taking place in the center of the year. We're talking about 100, sometimes even 200 meetings prior to this huge summit you saw, I guess, at least twice or 3 times before, with all those heads of states and governments. Before they meet, they have hundreds of negotiations prior to that, and all those negotiations, lots of people like me who try to lobby those negotiations to bring in their certain ideas. And there you see we have a lot of lovely letters like B20, L20, C20, and so on. What do they stand for? We have the private sector lobbyists, which are joining under the name of B20, Business 20. We have the trade unions, Labor 20, in short L20. NGOs or CSO are gathering under the name of Civil 20, C20. We have think tanks who try to come up with concrete policy briefs for the G20, think tank, T20 or Think 20. We have also the youth and the science, and a rather new movement, or I just called it movement, but it's actually just officially in a lobby engagement group. It's W20, and well, this stands for Women20, and well, as I just said, G20 represents two-thirds of the world's population. So this is 1/3 of the world's population, which is more about 2 billion people. So this group of mine is trying to speak for about 2 billion people. So I just want to stress that you are aware this is not a homogeneous group. This is we are everything. We are mothers. We are pupils. We are entrepreneurs. We are people working for somebody else. We're people with low income and with big income, and all of these women were put in one group, and I should tell the other old guys what they are thinking, what they need. So I just want to make sure that you understand that those groups are more or less all in this group as well. Just the only thing is that these are just females, and these are the normal people, but what's normal then? Anyway, so going back to the G20, as I said, each year the presidency is shifting. This year Germany has a big task to bring all those heads of states together and to discuss some serious issues. As I said, financial stability is the main one, but Germany understood that if we want financial stability, well, we need to open up our heads and come up with other issues which are linked to it, otherwise we will never get there. So what you can see here are the major issues of the agenda from Germany, and the ones which I highlighted a little bit are the ones we thought, okay, this is where we might get in, but we could talk about this later. So this was G20. Any questions on G20 so far? Oh, quiet again. So this is G20, for example. This was in 2014 in Australia during its Australian presidency, and what you can see on this picture are more palm trees than women. So It was actually the meeting of the finance ministers and central bank governors. And in 2014, a group like W20 did not exist. So we had all these other letters, plus 20, but we did not have a group focusing on women's empowerment. This lovely group, I just showed you the picture, came up with the idea that for more growth, we need to bring more women into the labor force. Because if they're not working, they cannot provide for our own growth and for resilience and so on and so forth. So we need more women in the labor force. But there is a huge gap when you take a look at the employment rate of women and the employment rate of men. Huge gap in each of the G20 countries, and we need to minimize this gap by 25% until 2015. Oh no, this is wrong. 15 is an interesting. No, it was 25 by 25. Okay, this was my mistake. Anyways, so we had the first time ever the G20 coming up with a concrete goal focusing on women. So like ever, and this was the moment when colleagues of mine stepped into it and said, okay, if you want to achieve this, now you need to open up the door for women and women's groups. Otherwise, who's taking care of this? Who's going to remind you? So this was the base for Turkey to ever set up the first W20 meeting in 2015. And the next year, in China, it's the second time W20 met or actually tried to develop this network. But this was just a very early stage, and I can tell you, to bring together about 2 billion women, this takes some time. So when it comes to Germany, in 2016, we started on the 1st December. We had not really a network. What has been taking place so far was just a summit in China and a summit in Turkey, bringing together at least some people from some G20 countries, not women from all G20 countries, and we wanted to change that. So we thought, okay, it's not just okay to have a 2-day meeting. We need a way bigger dialogue. We need to include way more people, and we need to really make it inclusive and transparent. And therefore, we had several events offline. I talk about this later, but online as well. So we gave a lot of women the opportunity to bring in their expertise and to bring in their concrete recommendations for the G20. So we hosted the third W20 summit, and when I talk about you need to know that Germany, as a G20 presidency, did mandate 2 CSOs from Germany. One is the National Council for Women's Organizations, which is an umbrella organization for more than 60 women's organizations like Terre de Femme. And the other one is the Association for German Women Entrepreneurs, which makes sense, as I said, focusing on financial stability. So what we did, or what those 2 organizations did, they built up an office, which I'm allowed to manage, which is one of the best jobs I ever had. And luckily, they also employed other employees, because it's a lot of work we do. And we came up with 3 major pillars that we want to focus on this year. One is labor market inclusion. As I said, we had this goal of narrowing the gap of the labor participation rate, but we not only wanted to talk about the quantity of work, but also the quality of work and quality of earnings and so on and so forth. The second pillar was financial inclusion. There are several countries not allowing women to open up a bank account. This is something easily to be traced, but there are so many other discriminations going on, like there are a lot of studies proving the fact that women get less money when it comes assets when they're trying to get money for their entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. And the last pillar was the digital inclusion, which might be not known to you, but the digital transformation is taking place, period. But there is a gap between women participating and profiting from it and men. And this gap is going to multiply the other gaps which are already existing, coming to the labor market, coming to financial inclusion. So these were the main content pillars of our presidency, and the last, which you can see is strengthening W20, was more an internal mantra, like we need to be strong, we need to stay strong, and we need to continue our work, otherwise it's not making sense at all. So And as I said, we started in September with building up an office and getting some people on board. And then in the beginning of this year, we started our online dialogue with representatives from more than 20 countries who went to the UN to ask for their ideas. We had outreach events in Argentina, in Germany. We brought together private sector representatives, female ones. We brought together parliamentarians from all G20 countries. And we had several side events and huge conferences. We talked and we talked and we talked, but more importantly, we listened and we listened and we tried to understand, even though this group is so diverse, there's something each woman is telling us, which is more or less similar to what another woman is telling us as well. And we're trying to bring those things together and try to understand what are the major issues we need to bring together. And we managed. We put the major messages which were brought to us on one page, and we handed over this page to Angela Merkel, who is the acting G20 president, on a huge summit in April in Berlin. And it was fascinating because, we didn't expect it her, but Ivanka Trump decided to join us. And what can you do? And this brought us a lot of public, so to say. We had, I think, 400 participants, but about 500 representatives from press and media, from all over the world. And this was an interesting experience, so to say. But what we hope is that this public awareness, what we were doing, and the issues we were talking about, not just her dress, which was interesting, but what we were doing was definitely more important. This opened up a certain momentum, which I need you to stress again and again and again, that this is important what we are talking about. And therefore, I think it was about time that so many people came to us and to listen to what we had to say. So, but what did we have to say? Well, we came up with 7 concrete targets for women's economic empowerment and 5 requests from the G20. And we, as I said, it was just a one-pager, and of course it's quite complex. Therefore, we added an implementation plan with 12 chapters, 7 plus 5, and with recommending dated measures, dashboards with indicators, and so on and so forth. A lot of material for all those heads of states and government to go back home and to really put this into practice. And I don't want to read everything to you, but I guess, I ask you, who knows the Agenda 2030? Just give me a sign, please. There must be someone, just someone. The SDGs, correct. Who knows the SDGs? Yes. The goals for sustainable development of the UN. The world will be saved by 2030. There are 17 goals. And there's one goal, this is goal number 5, this is focusing on gender equality. And what you can see in this goal is more or less what we have here in our targets. Why? Because we do not want to invent the wheel again and again. We want to remind the ones in power that they already agreed on something, and that we now need to put this into action. It needs to be implemented. So we adjusted it a little bit so they can better understand what we are talking about, but in the end it's more or less just the Agenda 2030, and then we came up with concrete ideas how to put this into practice in the G20. So we're talking again about 25 by 25, we're talking about concrete programs for entrepreneurs and female cooperatives, we're talking about a concrete 5-year plan for gender equal digital transformation, and of course we want to remind them that we need constant access to the negotiations to remind them what they have to do. So, when we, to remind them what to do, as I said, a lot of negotiations, and here you just can see the timetable of the major negotiation tracks. These are not all negotiation tracks, it's just the, let's say, sub-summits of all those negotiations, like the agriculture ministers, foreign ministers meetings, finance ministers. This is rather hard to read. Anyway, there are a lot of ministers meeting. We have several task force, several working groups, and they had their own little summit, and in the end there was this huge summit in Hamburg. And why am I showing you this? I just want to show you this as well. Everything which is marked with a circle is something we stepped into, had our statement, gave them something, lobbied them before, behind, everywhere, and tried to make sure that women's empowerment is not just something on the side. It's nothing which is decorating something else. This is something which is a huge part in all of your negotiations, and we were there to give them concrete ideas on how this works. And because we know we are never to be seen if you're not cooperating with anybody else, we also had several joint declarations with the other engagement groups I shortly presented to you. You can see them. We also had we had two own studies when it comes to digitalization, one on the effects of digitalization on gender equality in the G20 economies, and one is more quality studies coming up with concrete ideas how to bridge the digital gap. We also have other interesting things. I don't want to bore you out. But what is the most important thing? This is a page of the G20 Leaders Declaration published this July. It is a page of the Leaders Declaration published in July. It is a page. Until then, it was never, ever mentioned in the Leaders Declaration that they have to do something concrete when it comes to women beside this little sentence, 25 by 25. This is a whole page. So, being there, being loud, being everywhere, it's finally changed something. And of course you can read it and then you can come to me and say, hey, come on, Juliane, this is a nice wording. What is really going to happen? They totally forget about women's violence issues and they so on and so forth. You're right, definitely you're right. But this is something where you can start. This is something all the G20 leaders and heads of state and government signed. This is something we can take to our governments and say, here, what is going to happen now? You signed this. I want to take you responsible for what you signed and what you did. And so for me, this is really a historical moment, and that's why I'm really, really proud that something like this did happen. So in this text, as I said, a lot of wording, which is important, but remind you, this is the international level. The wording is always like this, so it's different when it comes to other levels. But they came up with a concrete project focusing on gender equal digital transformation, which is e-skills for girls. There's a huge platform, and each G20 country needs to nurture this. This is one of the tasks. They come up with a huge fund, which is facilitated by the World Bank, giving a lot of money from the G20 to developing countries. This was quite often misunderstood by the press. They thought, okay, now Ivanka and her friends got money from the G20 again. No, it's not. It's actually going to the developing countries. It's not a single cent is going to the G20. And we have an official task force within all of those official task forces of the G20, which should be in close cooperation with W20, which is a really, really big success for us. So, what are the lessons learned? I think my presentation is actually more about lobbying than about women's rights, but I think this is very important because I'm a feminist by heart, and I'm this, I think, for ages now. But what I discover, or what my experience are, that normally feminist groups are spending more energy on fighting themselves than fighting the enemy. So what is really, really important, what helped this, was really to focus and say, where are we? What can we achieve? Which language do we know? And this is what we're focusing on. We're not talking about all the other issues which are important, because this is our group, and there needs other groups to come up and to join this fight. But we are here, we are focused, and we are concretely working on it. The second thing is continuity. So continuity within this year, that we are repeating our messages again and again and again, but also that we are taking our responsibility within the Troika. I didn't introduce it so far, but as I said, the G20 is an informal forum, but it works with the Troika system, so that the current presidency is guided by the last presidency and the presidency to come, so they're working together as a Troika. So, and Germany will take its part in the Troika, so W20 representatives will be taking part in the Troika. So, and we're are working very, very closely already with Argentina and already talking to Japan, which comes afterwards. And we're thinking about setting up a secretariat so that there is more continuity in this process. Yes, and to mainstream, as I said, not just to focus on one of those negotiation tracks, but to be visible everywhere with one clear message constantly, then you have won an achievement. And last but not least, this is, I think, just my personal biggest lesson I learned. Well, inclusive and transparent process, yes, check, of course, but I mean something else. We all have pillars in our heads. We all have those figures of what is right, what is wrong, which group do I belong to. I was the nice environmentalist for quite a while, so that's why I hate everybody who speaks for a big company. Of course, I do so. I mean, you wouldn't. And I don't like old men, I'm sorry, it's just generally. So, but where does it get us? Nowhere. It doesn't. It just can change the world if I leave the pattern in my head behind and I try to listen to what someone else needs to tell me. And it sounds so simple, but just realize how often we just react because we think my group wants me to react like this. Otherwise, I may not be a member of this group anymore. So, but what for? So I really, really want to encourage you to just take this experience of mine. I talk to entrepreneurs a lot within the last year. I learned a lot from these very encouraged women. And I talked to so many other people, and I never expected to learn so much from them because I had to. My task was to get them together and to come up with a one-pager. So just because of this task, I overcome something, and I really, really, really invite you to do so too. And I hope that this is something which sticks not just within W20. I'm pretty sure not everybody here represents a country from the G20, but which is going on forward beyond the G20, which can be a narrative which not just for feminists or not just for women, but for everybody makes us just change this world finally. So in Outlook, even though the summit in Hamburg took place in July, we did not stop working. We had several other events. So I again crossed the Atlantic Ocean, went to Washington and New York, and I will go to Buenos Aires, which is the best part of my job. And we, of course, have not just discussions on international level, but also will bring, again, people and representatives from German women's organizations together to ask them for concrete input for the next agenda, for the next presidency, guided by Argentina. So I talked a lot. The one-pager and the implementation plan I mentioned, you can find everything on w20-germany.org. Yeah. Lot of documents, lot of studies, lot of interesting things. You can talk to me or my colleagues on Twitter. You can talk to me in the next break. Thank you very much for listening. Oh no, of course, if you have questions.
Going to start the next Q&A. Before we start, for this round of questions, I'm going to be giving priority to anybody who didn't have an opportunity to ask during the last round. So if you have a question, please put up your hand. The website.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Can you please stand up? Sure to give your country as well.
I can make this short, it doesn't come up here.
I think I saw a hand on the left hand side.
I'm from Singapore, and my question to you is, on a personal basis, you mentioned how difficult it is to sort of talk about this topic with basically people that do not share your values. That's something I think when you talk about feminism fighting, infighting between feminists and advantage, stuff like that. And what is your recommendation, especially when you do your job, for explaining what feminism means to people who do not believe in that? I know some people who believe they're fighting for feminism are actually bringing down the jobs. What's your advice for people?
for feminists fighting themselves,
And
or
also-
the other ones not yet convinced? I think
So,
it's different
and
questions.
it might be a separate question, but
Okay, let me start with the ones not yet convinced. Then I talk about privileges. Because it's not about men, women, about the gender, it's about the one with privileges, and mostly men. This is a proof of concept. So, but we need to deconstruct the reality and to see what is happening due to privileges and what not, and who has access to these privileges and why not, and then we are talking. So this is one thing, because I do not want to talk about biology. I do not think that women are better than men. Women can be bitches as well, and I want to have the right not just to be So it's right? But that's why I do not want a discussion on when you put a woman in this position, everything will be better. No, but it should be a chance to get into this position, not just for someone with another gender. So this is another discussion. So and when it comes to the feminists, I try to I copy from the EU. They work rather well with this. Is to agree to disagree. So I'm not discussing what we're not agreeing on. We try to find what we agree on, and this is a lot actually. We spend so much energy to discuss whether the food in the break is vegan or not, but there are so many other things, and it's so easy to gather just those issues we can focus on. And then the next step is, what are the low-hanging fruits? What is easy to accept in the first step? Because if we get successful rather soon, this empowers the people joining me, because we see that what we do together is successful, and then we can go on the next step. So agree to disagree, fine. You don't have to have the same hobbies and the same taste in music like me, but we need to find what's something which is uniting us. We focus on this, we find something to be successful with, and then we go to teach. I'm such a big deal. Anyway.
We have time for just one last question. So hand up on the right. Please stand up.
Thanks I would like to ask you, what would be the very first concrete measure that would lead you to that, when done, would lead you to killing the community? Just get there.
This is hard to say. As I said, we try to be everywhere. It is not a women's issue. It's not something you can separate from everything else. So that's why it's hard to say. But just coming to the G20, there are instruments trying to look how this goal 25 by 25 is developing. They're taking a look every year. The OECD is in charge of this. So right now, not that much progress, but we'll see how what we did this year will react on this, what's coming up afterwards. But there's so many things. So many things. I'm not quite sure whether you heard about this. The World Economic Forum coming up with this report on gender gaps each year, and maybe you also heard that the year before last year it was about 100 years. They told us we will need to close all those gaps, and last year it was about 170 years. So it's not quite faster. It's slowing down. So, but reports like this, measuring what's going on, seeing whether those gaps are widening or narrowing, this is important. And I don't care where. I want to see progress. So that it's rather sad actually. So I'm standing here laughing because otherwise what shall I do? But it is sad, and it's not happening because some guys in 20 need to understand. We need to understand that we have the right to ask for this, and that we have to change ourselves, as I said, and then we need to focus on this.
Okay, that concludes the Q&A portion of this talk. Please join me in thanking Juliane Rosin,